There's something special about the city.
Halifax is always like a second home to me.
I am a photographer. I love shooting events, people, sceneries. This is the right city for me.
Halifax is very friendly for startups. It is a diverse community. It supports different culture.
The reason why I love Halifax
I graduated
consider Halifax
It's my 8th year in Halifax now. At 6 a.m. on August 28th of 2012, I landed here alone with 4 pieces of luggage. And I see nothing but gray and the morning sunlight through the window of the aircraft. And at that moment, I already know this will be such a unique and different experience. I attended a community design program in Dalhousie University. So this program teaches me to look at cities from various perspectives. I met so many talented people who live and work here, and they're so welcoming to me. Just looking back, I think they are one of the reasons I stayed in Halifax. So after I graduated, I started my media and production company. I've lost track of how many times people have asked me why I came to Halifax and why I decided to stay. That was the story I tell. It always seems to be overwhelming to others when I explain how I traveled alone or how I left my family to live in a country 10,000 kilometers away. I think that's why they always want to know why. And I have to admit, sometimes I wonder about these things too. Why do people come here? When did this immigration journey start? What was the journey like for other generations? This is Fred. He came to Halifax 62 years before I did. Our journeys may have started and ended in the same places, but he has a much different story to share.
The aircraft developed engine trouble when we were over Taiwan, and I said to myself, I said a prayer, I said, God, this is my first time. Please let me complete my journey. Five days, six nights to travel from Vancouver to Halifax on the train. How did I feel? Cold, desolate. You know, even in China, everywhere you go, the people. When you came down here in the middle of winter, on Bellington Street, no people. So, you know, oh, what a difference. What a difference. But I was, you know, any other negative impression I have is wiped out by meeting my father. 18 years. I never knew I met him because I was very small at the time. Every day I went to school since grade 8. I mostly sit at one corner and use my little dictionary to find out what the words mean. That was a very, very difficult time for me. I was really lucky to have a chance to do what I did. I saw a lot of this world.
As I've dug further into old stories, I have found that what I'm hearing is not just a story about immigration. I've discovered that this story is really one about Halifax, about the forming of this vibrant and diverse community, about how we all shaped its history. Generations of people from around the globe have contributed their own part to the story, a story that is rooted in the city, on the street, on the wall. Halifax's story is being written every day. these are just a few of the chapters. My questions and curiosity in how these stories connected to Halifax through the years brought me to Albert. I met him through photography. He's been collecting and documenting Chinese immigration history for the past 20 years.
When our grandfather arrived, he set up a couple of small businesses. The first one was like a grocery store, a dry goods store on Granville Street near the corner of Salter Street, where there's a parkade there now. And so there's still those pockets where, you know, they started out and now over 100 years later, they've kind of like somehow have become Chinese owned again with a newer generation. 2 generations later, I guess. My grandfather arrived here in 1903. Before my grandfather arrived here in Halifax, there was a population in the 1890s of less than 30 Chinese. When he arrived, it was a whole thing where there's probably maybe 50 Chinese here at the time. It took him about 6 weeks to leave the village of Hoi Ping to arrive here in Halifax. He traveled through mountains and trails and rivers and streams to arrive like in Guangzhou and then going to Hong Kong, where they spent a few days stocking up on food and getting ready for the ocean voyage, 3 weeks across the Pacific Ocean. A lot of people think that the Chinese who arrived here in Halifax were railway workers. They weren't. They came here to seek better opportunities. If one was operating a farm in China, they might have been making 9 or 10 cents a day back in the early 1900s. And that would be compared to working in a restaurant or in a laundry and making about $1.40 a day. In China, North America was known as Gold Mountain because the gold rush in California and also in British Columbia as well.
Hearing all these old stories from Fred and Albert about how their families stayed here and grew in Halifax reminded me of what kept me here. How without even realizing it, Halifax started to feel like home. But what makes something feel like home? Friends, happy memories, community, or is it a feeling of comfort and safety? When I first came to Halifax, familiar foods and people always had a way of comforting me, even when I felt very far away. It was through familiar food that I met Miss Wan. Her food had a way of making me feel at home. It became a link that I could rely on when I miss my hometown.
When the student come our restaurant, like go home. I stay Halifax. I don't go any place. I love Halifax. People, they're lovely, and the business is good. To use the local fresh food and make the Chinese real taste. This year I go to China looking for the local real taste, the popular taste, and then I learn for the local chef. If you just think the business, you cannot get success. Even you're doing for the business, for the everything, you should this hard work and put your mind, your heart, you can get success.
When I was little, I grew up in a university town. My parents and grandparents seemed to know all the people that we would pass on the street. So many people stopping to say hello. Now when I walk here in Halifax, I experience the same thing. I've come to realize that this is part of Halifax's charm. My friend Johnny shares similar stories to me about how great it is to live in a city where you get to know so many people.
And last year has changed my career 100% to commercial. So I help a lot of clients fulfill their dreams when they want to be their own, entrepreneurs who want to build their own, business, and help them to fulfill the dream. In Halifax, every single street, the business street, when I have a customer, a client, and I open up business over there, I always feel when I drive in by, kind of feel you pass your friend's house, something like that. One of the reasons I picked Halifax, actually, it's a postcard. I said, well, that looks nice and similar to Hong Kong. So I just, with my backpack, with probably, I can't remember, $100 in my pocket, there was some cash, and I called a cab from Halifax Airport all the way to St. Mary's University. What I'm doing right now, geography, distance is very important for me because I don't want to spend 2 or 3 hours in the car where I can sit down with my client. It's right city for me. Halifax is always like a second home to me.
And Johnny isn't alone. In recent years, Halifax is becoming much more attractive to immigrants. In 2016, Nova Scotia had a 61% increase in newcomers, the highest jump in a single year since World War II. And China is playing a big role in the province's growing population. But being a newcomer in Halifax can be tough. When I talked with Fred, he told me how when he first came to Halifax, he was the only Chinese student in his class, and he had a lot of language barriers to navigate. Today, there are a lot of resources open to newcomers that are helping them in their journey to make Halifax their new home. Edward is just one of the many who has had the opportunity to experience these benefits.
I came to Halifax at 2016. I graduated from the international high school. We learn a lot in the high school 3 years, so that helps me to landing to Halifax, to Canada. So language, that's okay for me. I'm the president of the St. Mary's University Chinese Student Association for this year. In recent years, we helped the new Chinese students to set up the phone card, bank card, and we take them to the Access Nova Scotia to set up the Nova Scotia ID. From what I see in university, we have a big amount of Chinese students in Halifax. There is 7,000 Chinese immigrants plus 4,000 people, which is Chinese students, stay in Halifax. I probably graduate next year. I start a small business this summer, and also we work with the local Chinese community. So I put what I learned for my business. So I hope stay in Halifax to serve Halifax.
It's amazing to me how much Halifax story of immigration has grown in such a short amount of time. In 1952, Halifax had only 4 Chinese organizations listed in the local Chinese directory. Today, there are more than a dozen Chinese societies and organizations dedicated to assist international students, connect newcomers, and showcase Chinese culture in Halifax. As more people start to call Halifax their home, they each bring something new and wonderful to the city's story. I'm grateful to be able to tell this small part of it. To me, this is why Halifax is so wonderful and special. I'm telling my story, their story, and in a way, your story too.